Welcome back to The Explainer. Let's get right into it, because today we're tackling a fascinating and honestly a slightly uncomfortable truth. Have you ever looked at a historically successful company and just wondered, how on earth have they managed to stay alive for so long? I mean, they've got mediocre service, chaotic operations, weak positioning, yet there they are. Well, today we're breaking down exactly why some businesses were never actually as good as they looked, and more importantly, what real, undeniable competitive strength requires today. To understand this, we have to start by validating a pretty provocative reality. For decades, a lot of very average businesses didn't just survive, they thrived. But here's the catch. It wasn't because they were operationally brilliant, not at all. They thrived because they literally had help. They benefited from an environment that naturally compensated for their weak marketing, their sloppy sales, and their poor delivery. They were essentially being propped up by ghosts. These were structural advantages that made the company look way more competent than it actually was.
And this brings us right to our core metaphor for this entire analysis, the difference between a tailwind and an engine. You know, a tailwind pushes you forward from the outside. An engine creates that forward movement from the inside. And right now, the absolute most dangerous mistake any business leader can make is confusing a macroeconomic tailwind with a powerful internal engine. When you're growing fast and the wind is strong, it is so incredibly easy to pat yourself on the back and say, wow, our engine is amazing. But the real question is, what happens when the wind just stops?
Now, if you were with us for our last explainer, our V43 analysis, you'll remember we focused entirely on building that internal improvement engine, right? We asked things like, can your organization actually improve itself? Can you test, diagnose, and govern better processes? Well, today in V44, we're zooming out. We're looking at the macro picture to explain exactly why that internal engine isn't just a nice-to-have anymore. It is an absolute competitive survival necessity.
Because here's the crucial point. The market isn't necessarily just getting harder. It's actively ripping off the training wheels. The structural cushions, those ghost subsidies that used to protect average operations, are disappearing. And that makes them incredibly dangerous to depend on as your main source of strength. We're actually seeing this massive transformation play out right now in how companies have to justify their worth. Let's look at how this flows.
So, in the past, a lot of companies could just rely on competitive devaluation. Maybe macro conditions or currency dynamics just naturally made your price look pretty attractive, even if your offering wasn't world-class. The currency was essentially doing a huge chunk of the selling for you. But as that tailwind fades, you can't rely on being a cheap relative price anymore. That cushion is gone. You have to replace it with provable differentiation. You literally have to earn your price tag through measurable delivery and real, undeniable customer outcomes.
And just like you can't rely on a cheap price, you also can't rely on simply being the closest option anymore. Think about it. Businesses used to win just because they were the first store on the block, right? Buyers had practically no local alternatives, so you were the only option. But being nearby, that is definitely no longer a protective mode. You've got to transition from being the only option to being the safest option. That means winning because you actively lower the buyer's downside with a rock-solid promise and clear accountability.
Historically, a lot of businesses also hid behind what we call tax fog. We're talking about informal economies or gray area accounting that basically created implicit extra margins. It was this invisible cushion that made the books look okay. But depending on hidden margins to stay profitable is incredibly fragile today. The market is aggressively forcing a shift toward clean margin. This is margin you earn purely through sheer efficiency, better tech, less waste, and high customer retention. It has to be able to survive total transparency. Speaking of fragile advantages, we have to talk about the real estate or asset cushion. It used to be completely normal to hide massive business risks and deep operating weaknesses within a wealthy real estate portfolio. The liquidity essentially shielded all your operational mistakes. But that fake safety net is gone. You can't just hide risk in a building anymore. You have to build operational safety directly into your daily workflow. Tight promises, documented steps, early warning indicators, and incredibly fast correction loops. And you know, this false sense of security definitely extended to how companies treated credit too. Now, to be clear, debt can absolutely finance productive growth. That's not the problem. The danger is using easy credit as structural life support just to hide a severely weak operating model. When that easy money dries up, borrowed oxygen from banks has to be replaced by earned oxygen. Under this new reality, your business must be profitable because it actually delivers value and has healthy, standalone economics, not just because a bank is willing to finance your mistakes.
Just as you can't borrow your way out of bad operations, you definitely cannot underpay your way out of them either. Exploiting underpaid or informal labor used to be this hidden lever for mere survival. But here's the thing. When you're truly held accountable for the end value you deliver, waste and rework become staggeringly expensive. Minimizing salaries per human suddenly costs you way more in lost value and errors. The only replacement is high-performance capability. That means better specialists, sharper training, better tools, and performance pay, because that is what actually protects your delivery.
And all of this naturally brings us to the grand illusion of permanent expansion. A permanently expanding market is amazing at effortlessly hiding terrible retention, awful conversion rates, and just chaotic operations. You're growing by default simply because the water level keeps rising and lifting all the boats. But when demand stops automatically inflating, growth by default has to be completely replaced by growth by precision. You only win when your offer is tightly engineered, your delivery is flawless, and your customer compounding is actually real.
We also really have to acknowledge the absolute death of the geographic wall. Distance and logistics used to afford you so much protection. A buyer might compare you to 3 local options. Today, they're comparing you to 3,000 global ones. The internet doesn't just create competition, it creates endless, relentless comparison. So that local protection naturally gets replaced by radical transparency. The businesses that win now are the ones that step directly into the light and confidently say, "We own the downside."
Ultimately, all this radical transparency reshapes how we even view business relationships. The old advantage was just who you know. Networks would often just flat out replace true competition. Now, look, relationships are still fantastic for getting your foot in the door, absolutely. But relying solely on relationship inertia without actual measurement, that is deeply fragile. Who you know has to complement, not substitute, what you can prove. Real measurement exposes anyone who's just keeping a seat warm.
So, let's pull all of this together. As all these external cushions we just talked about, the cheapness, the local scarcity, the fog, the easy credit, the geographic walls, as they weaken and vanish, what exactly is left standing? Well, when the tailwinds stop, the only things keeping a business upright are these 4 internal pillars: proof, process, competence, and accountability. We are witnessing a total market shift away from privilege-based advantage straight toward proof-based advantage.
So, how do you figure out where your business actually stands? You use what's brilliantly called the GHOST-SUBSIDY audit. You sit down and honestly ask, what external tailwinds are we currently depending on? Is it super cheap financing, one giant legacy client, a temporary lack of local competition? Rate how heavily you depend on that advantage. Then ask the hard question, do we actually control it? If the answer is no, what exact internal capability is going to replace it if it fails tomorrow? And crucially, what proof do we have that this capability actually exists right now?
To prove you actually have these internal capabilities, you might start seeing companies offering incredibly radical guarantees. Take a look at this blue -1 tag here. It represents a negative price ultra guarantee, where a company literally pays a penalty out of their own pocket if value is missing. But please do not misunderstand this. It is not some magic marketing trick or an instant moat. It is strictly a structural stress test. It is a massive accountability signal that forces an organization to expose its own operational weaknesses. It asks point blank, can your pricing, your people, and your margins actually survive legitimate failure?
Because that visible guarantee on the surface, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real, significantly harder to copy moat is the entire capability stack living beneath it. This ties back to everything we've been covering. The continuous testing from V37, the customer compounding from V40, the standard protection in V41, and those full cost economics from V42. For any accountability mechanism to actually work, it has to be supported by this precise sequence. A clear promise, solid process, data, highly trained people, strong economics, undeniable proof, and lightning-fast correction loops. That stack right there, that is your actual moat.
And this is exactly why any imitator is going to be in for a really rough time. Imagine a weak competitor sees your accountability signal and thinks, oh, I'll just copy those words and slap them on my website. If they copy that visible guarantee without possessing the rigorous internal capability stack we just talked about, they will literally break their own economics. If they have poor qualification, sloppy delivery, and bad measurement, a strong guarantee becomes financially self-destructive for them. The guarantee is visible, yes, but the operational system is the real moat.
All of this brings us down to one razor-sharp focal point for you and your team. Take a really hard, honest look at your success over the last few years. You need to separate your actual skill from structural luck. Ask yourself this central question: what does your business actually have left when the environment completely stops helping you? When the market is totally transparent and full cost visibility is the baseline standard, does your underlying business model still actually work?
Which leaves us with a powerful final thought. Look, we are absolutely not saying you should abandon a real advantage just because it's external. If you've got a fantastic location or incredibly cheap financing, use it, leverage it. But to figure out exactly where you stand beneath those advantages, I highly recommend checking out NIGBook and running your company through the -1 diagnostic. It's an incredible way to measure your real capability. Because the ultimate strategic rule is this: use the tailwind, but build an engine that still works when the wind stops. Replace those fragile cushions with real measured work, earned trust, and ethical accountability. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.